Hello and welcome. As some of you who have been watching my YouTube video channel, they already might know that I have been creating this series of technical videos, especially related around Azure security for quite some time. Those who are watching this video for the first time, I recommend you to please go into my channel and you may find several topics that might be of interest to you. With that, today's topic is around Azure Managed Identities, which obviously will be followed by a demo. This is how all my technical presentations are, and this presentation is no exception. So, wait for the demo to kick in, and I hope that would simplify all the discussion that we're going to have here. Having said that, I think everybody agrees that identities are one of the main constituent of any organization's security posture, right? Security and compliance pretty much runs around identities, no matter what the solution is, what the platform is, whether it's on-prem or it's a cloud or a hybrid cloud or a public cloud or a infrastructure as a service, software as a platform as a service. I don't think you can conceive a solution without identities. Having said that, once you understand that part and you agree to it, obviously this topic is going to be a very interesting and exciting, and I believe intriguing too. With that, what is Azure Managed Identities? A few months back, maybe a year back, Azure Managed Identities was referred by Microsoft as Azure Managed Service Identities, or MSI. So if you read MSI, pretty much Managed Identities is the new name for MSI, or Managed Service Identities. Obviously, as the name indicates, it has to do something with the services, right? So, and the second part is, which is self-explanatory, these identities are managed by Azure. So what is so special? Why do we need to talk about it? And how can Azure Managed Identities actually help you improve your overall security posture? That's a overarching goal of this presentation. And if I can accomplish that, I think then that means this presentation is a success. I always say that if you have watched my other videos, security should always be an enabler, not a blocker. And this presentation would also not be an exception to that thought process, right? So let's try to understand and dive into what's managed identities. As I already said, managed identities are managed service identities. So in order to understand it better, I guess it would be better to go back into your on-prem solutions and try to resonate that concept here, because in on-prem solution, we all use service IDs, right? Or service accounts, whatever you want to call them. For example, the IIS, SQL, Oracle, Exchange, right? You name it. One of the challenges with these service identities or service accounts are that if you set the password policies around it, and if you want to change this password, you have to go and reconfigure each services with a change password, which is a nightmare. So by and large, most organizations end up creating the service accounts or service IDs with password never expires. I think majority of organizations have seen that going that route. So what's the workaround? Because as probably you would agree, from security perspective, having an account with password never expires is a big red flag from security. And that means these service accounts are vulnerable. There's no doubt about it. You read about it and you will find one of the most head account are service accounts. So what's the workaround? We are still not talking about Azure Managed Identity. I'm just trying to set the groundwork here and make sure that we can resonate the importance of this managed identity. So what happened is, in Microsoft, probably somewhere in 2012, came with the idea of managed service accounts, Active Directory managed service accounts, MSAs. And then it was followed in somewhere 2012, I guess, with the GMSA, which is Group Managed Service Accounts. I'm not going to go in detail, but I'm just going to make sure that you understand why I'm even talking about it. One of the key differentiator here of using this managed service account or group managed service accounts was these accounts were like a computer account. And if you have looked into Active Directory and you have worked in Active Directory, you perhaps already know that like a user account, each Active Directory has computer accounts. Those machines that are joined to the Active Directory have their own computer accounts. And by the way, they also have their own password. Computer accounts also have a password. As in Active Directory admin, we never need to worry and create those passwords because they are managed and maintained by Active Directory. And that's the key differentiator here. When I say maintained and managed and created by Active Directory, that means the complexity of the password, it is randomly created and it is automatically rotated every 30 days. You don't have to ever think about a computer account password, right? Very simple logical explanation here. The managed service accounts fall into the same category. So they extended the benefit of this schema of Active Directory and introduced managed service account. Basically, when you use the managed service account, it is managed by Active Directory, self-explanatory. At the same time, the password rotation and complexity is now Active Directory responsibility, not you or my responsibility. At the same time, you are now not required to go and revisit your service configuration and reset the password there, because that's the biggest takeaway here, right? And that's where the managed service accounts came into existence. And I think some of the organizations, not a whole lot of organizations use them. Very few have been using them. And if you are using, kudos to you. If you are not using, I recommend you to think about it, right? Now, the same analogy here is translated when we talk about Azure Managed Identities. It is the same idea that these identities are managed by Azure Active Directory in this case, right? They are managed, created by Azure Active Directory. They are rotated by Azure Active Directory. And basically, they serve as a service accounts for your Azure. I don't think I can make it simpler than this. Now, having said that, you would probably understand once we get into the demo that there is already something known as service principal, or sometimes generally you will call them an SPN, right? Service principal names. These have been in use for quite some time, and I think everybody that has worked in Azure probably have used it already. So now we need to see how does this Azure Managed Identity differentiates with service principal name, and what is that additional advantage and value proposition that Azure Managed Identities are bringing into the table, right? So that's where we look into. So at a very high level, objective here is that can we improve our overall identity management solution in terms of Azure, right? Whether it's an identity hygiene, can we simplify it? Automatic provisioning and deprovisioning. It might not sound very related to you, or it might not be, you might not be able to relate to what I'm saying here, but it will make a lot of sense, because often you will create these service principles and you will forget, and they are not even being used, but they stay in your environment, and that causes an additional security vulnerability. Probably you want to have a better control on provisioning and deprovisioning of the service principal or even user account. This is no-brainer here, folks. And you will see, can our managed identity help you in that process or minimize that impact? Rotation, I already spoke about, right? So I don't want to sound like a broken record here. We'll see it soon. Security, overall security and compliance enhancement. As I said, if by using the managed identities, your overall security and compliance posture is improved, then I think this is worth watching this video. This is worth using managed identities in your security initiative on your different Azure solution. That's where I would start with. With that, let's just continue discussing it, right? So when we talk about managed identity, we need to understand what is the component end types, right? So you will see it is very similar to service principal name. Primarily, it is a service principal name, but with an added layer on top of it. So as you already know that each of your service principal have a client ID, an object ID, and a principal ID. So this is pretty much the same. But what makes it different and distinct is that it also has a layer of Azure Instant Metadata Service, or called as IMDS, which is a REST endpoint. The beauty here is that this endpoint is accessible only within Azure. So not accessible to the outside world, and that enhances our security posture right here, right? So you'll see how effectively we can use it, because until you see the demo, you probably would not understand the advantage and the beauty of IMDS here, right? And as I said, these identities, the managed identities, can be of two different types. One is a system assigned managed identity, which is created during the provisioning of the resource, or you could also add after provisioning the resource, which we'll see and demonstrate it. And these IDs are trusted by the instance subscription, right? That's very important to know. So alternatively, you can also have user assigned managed identities, where you create an identity as a Azure resource, right? By the way, when you do this, you don't even have to go to Azure Active Directory to create them, right? So this is the interesting part of this proposition here. And we'll see how does that matter, and what the difference is between a system assigned managed identity and user assigned managed identity momentarily. Now, moving forward, let's just try to look at a very high level what this architecture looks like, right? So obviously we all know the ARM, or Azure Resource Manager. Through the Azure Resource Manager, we can create either a system assigned managed identity or user assigned managed identity through Azure CLI or Azure Portal or PowerShell, whatever you prefer to, right? And when you create that, it automatically provisions that as a service principal in your Azure Active Directory. And remember that it does not, you don't need to go to Active Directory to create it. It is automatically created if you are creating a system assigned managed identity. It's automatically created while provisioning it, or you could add it afterward. When you're creating a user assigned managed identity, you can go into your resource group and create a user assigned managed identity without going and touching your Azure Active Directory. That's point number one. Number two, that as I already stated, that you don't have to worry about a service principal name secret, right? Because as I said, that is being managed by Azure Active Directory. Not only managed, also rotated every 46 days. So both the creation of a complex random password and rotation of the password is automatically taken care of as soon as you create the service principal. And at the same time, the next layer that I mentioned earlier is when you create this managed identity, this Azure Active Directory also update the Azure Instance Metadata Service. The URL is given here with 169.254.169.254 IP address. That is your REST endpoint that is accessible to your different services. Now, one more important thing, folks, here is that just creation of a managed identity is not going to provide you, or is a complete solution, for the lack of a better word. After you create this managed identity, you also need to have a proper role-based access control on different resources, because primarily by just creating a managed identity, you created an identity or service principal name in Azure Active Directory, and that's it. It has zero rights, zero permissions just by that process. But by assigning a role to a particular resource group, resource, subscription, or management group, then you start getting the benefit of this. Then you start giving the permission to that managed identity, right? I think this is pretty simple here, right? And without going into this complexity of this visual or diagram here, when you see it, you will see it how simple, how easy it is. It could be a one single checkbox or one single variable that you need to pass in your code, and you're pretty much done, right? And that's the simplicity. That's what I talked about. And actually, this reminds me that when we talk about security and when we talk about zero trust, this helps you to your overall zero trust approach when we talk about identities here. And you will see, when we talk about zero trust, we talk about three different pillars here, right? So least privilege, we talk about prepare to breach, right? And also have a minimize the radius blast radius, providing authentication at every single layer. This actually would address the core principles of your zero trust as well, which we are going to see soon once we get into a demo, right? I hope it makes sense, folks, and I'm trying to simplify it. And on top of it, let's just see the difference between the system assigned and user assigned managed identities, right? So as I was saying that when we talk about system assigned identities or system assigned managed identity, it could be created during the provisioning or even after the provisioning. Very, very easy, right? On the other hand, if you have a user assigned managed identity, you need to create as a standalone resource. Once you see it, it will probably become very easier for you to understand it. The life cycle is extremely important. That's where your provisioning and deprovisioning that we talked about earlier comes into picture. Because this has a shared life cycle as far as the system assigned managed identities are concerned, because it is created when you create that resource or you update that resource. And by the way, when you delete that resource, it's deleted. So no more orphan, no more unused SPN settings in your environment. If that, for an example, you created a VM or a web app or a function or a logic app, right? So you created a system managed identity, blah blah, and voila, it creates there. And as soon as you delete that resource, that SPN, that managed identity, is automatically deleted. So this helps your provisioning and deprovisioning process that we talked earlier. On the contrary, the user assigned managed identities are different because they are created as an individual Azure resource, right? So they have an explicit, they are not attached to a particular resource type. That means in order to delete them, you have to delete them manually. So when you are choosing between these managed identities, that may be one of your considerations to think about, right? And you will see an example of user assigned managed identity in one of my other presentations that I created a few weeks back on Azure Kubernetes Services, Active Directory integration, and using the managed identities on your Azure pods, right? So probably that would be a good use case for you if you're really interested to see it in action. I'm not going to demonstrate it here because this video will become too long. Now, when we talk about sharing across Azure resources, because the system assigned managed identity is assigned to a particular resource, that means it is only can be used by that resource, right? On the other hand, the user assigned managed identities could be shared and could be assigned to multiple users, multiple resources, right? So that's where it gets interesting. Now, when we talk about common use case, I think seeing is believing, and once you see that in action, I think it would make more sense. I will keep this slide deck ready for you and in the description section of my video so that you can download it and read it. But I think now we can get into the actual demo, I believe, right? So this is where we will get into a actual demo and see how does that unfold, and maybe it make more sense and you get more excited to use it in your environment. I'm going to pause it and get into my demo. Alright folks, so I'm back into my demo mode now, and you will see my Azure portal in front of it, my lab environment. And the first thing that I'm going to show you is to create a virtual machine with managed identities. And once I create a virtual machine with the managed identity, then we can go ahead and create and we can assign a RBAC role to this managed identity. And after assigning the RBAC role to this managed identity, we can see that what does it do for you. So step by step, and then we'll go to the next step. How about that? So let's go into that, and let me try to create a managed identity while creation, right? So we can go here and let's say compute virtual machine. This is, you are already familiar with this. I don't want to bore with you this. And let's see, here test demo, blah blah blah, and then East US. Okay, my machine is gonna be a Windows 10. Obviously, I need to complete this. Alright, so next disk. I'm not gonna change anything here. Networking. I have hooked up my VNet here, network security group for the time being. I don't want to, okay, let's leave it basic here. That's good. Off here. next management. This is where it will be interesting. And here you go, folks. System assigned managed identity. You could do it in a PowerShell CLI or GUI. You could do it now or you could do it later, right? So this is how we can create a system managed identity. I'm not going to go through this process. I'm going to show you a VM that already has been created through this process and already has a managed identity, right? So let's just look into that. I have this machine that I created this morning, and you will see here in identity, and it is turned on. By the way, this also allows you to turn it off if you want to disable that managed identity right here, or if you have created that VM in advance and you forgot to create and assign a managed identity, you could also turn it on right here. Basically, the second point that I mentioned, that you could create a system assigned managed identity during a provision, or you could also create it afterwards and update it, right? So this is where it is. In a few minutes, we will see that we could also create this these VMs through command line with the system managed identity, right? So that's coming in the next part of our demo. So this is very simple. Now, if you see here, when we talked about what does it do, right? So let's look into and see where this managed identity is. So if I go to Azure Active Directory, which is what we discussed earlier, and we go to our application here, which you guys are familiar with, and I would just say all applications just for the sake, and I look for here, and here is my managed identity, right? So it has got all those three components that we talked about, right? Application ID, object ID, but I don't have anything here for creating a secret or something. That's not here, right? And that's what is this service principal. But basically, this is a service principal which has an IDMS update already running in the background, and that's how we create a managed identity. You could do the similar thing for when you create a web app, or when you create a function, or when you can create a logic app, blah, blah, blah. So this is, I'm not going to go with all those because that video would become too long and boring. So I'm just going to stay focused here, right? So, but you can follow the same process to get it done, right? Now, the next step is to create and see how we can use the RBAC part of it. So going back into that resource group here. Actually, I already did that, but I'd like to show you. And when we show here and add a role assignment here, and you could assign a role. For an example, I'm just going to show you here. I'm not doing it. And here you go. You are already familiar. Again, you could do it into your Terraform scripts or whatever, right? I have my AZ Win 10. I save it, and I'm already done. I want to show you what is the current situation here, right? So because I already did that, I gave him a contributor, right? And you will see this as a contributor. Now, keep in mind, guys, this is very important to understand, because this is a system assigned managed identity, right? So as soon as somebody can log on to this VM with whatever account, it doesn't really matter. That particular user would get the rights that you have assigned to this system assigned managed identity. So if you are giving access to that VM, pretty much you are giving access to the resources where you have assigned the RBAC role here. This is very important. So if you mess with the RBAC here on this particular thing, you would mess up with security big time. So what could be a possible use case here, right? So I don't know whether you have heard about the Privileged Access Workstation, or PAW, which is now referred as a Azure Managed Workstation. Perhaps if I have to use it, I would create a Azure Managed Workstation, which should be another demo sometime in the next few weeks. You create an Azure Managed Workstation, which is completely locked down. You give access to only limited set of people who really need to do some privileged activities, and that's where you could use it. But understand the implication of it. So for an example, if I give this account AZWin10 a ownership right on a subscription, you know what I'm talking about, right? As soon as you do that and somebody logs onto that VM, he has access to the entire subscription. He can do anything he or she likes, because though his or her account doesn't have any rights, but because the VM has all the rights here, so I just want to make sure that you understand the implication of it, right? So we have a contributor rights here. Now we're going to try to create a VM from that VM using the managed identity. How does that sound? So let's get into that. So first thing, folks, that I want to show you here, that I'm logged in here as a local user on this workstation. So if you see here, this is the workstation and this is the account. So this user has pretty much no rights on your Azure Active Directory or even in Azure, right? So this is an independent local account just for this VM, zero rights there. Now the next thing is that we are trying to log in here with the system assigned managed identity to our Azure and try to create a new VM. Okay, so let's do that. So I just ran the command AZ login identity and I didn't even type anything, right? So I'm logged in here as a system assigned managed identity. So if you read it here, let me try to make the fonts bigger here. I hope you could read it now, right? So you see here how it is logged in here. User assigned identity information is MSI, which I referred earlier, which is managed service identity. That's what Microsoft used to call it, right? And type is service principal, no user here. You got it? Very, very easy and simple. Now I'm going to connect to the subscription and try to create a new VM. So folks, I connected to my subscription. I'm running this command azvm create, very simple command. You guys are familiar with this. I'm creating an Ubuntu VM. This is the name, this is the image name, this is the admin, blah blah blah, and let's execute it and see whether it let me create a VM or not. Right, and that's why I was able to do that, because if you recall, I had given this particular system assigned managed identity a contributor role on that resource group. If I try to do it somewhere else in another resource group, obviously I don't have rights. And that's where I mentioned that this is important to understand the RBAC behind it. If you do not consider that appropriately, you might give rights to someone that you probably don't want to do that. I kept saying it like a broken record, but I think that's an important consideration when you, especially when you're using a VM with system assigned managed identities, right? And please, while it is being provisioned, I would request that also read the article or documentation around Azure Managed Workstation, which might help you, is also help your overall security posture. I'm going to pause it, and once it is created. So folks, as you see, it didn't take long actually. It just created very quickly. That VM has now been provisioned, right? So that's a good test. And by the way, I think I have also assigned identity here with this variable here. If you see it here, this particular section, that means it should have created a VM with a managed identity. Let's check it. And if you see, here's my VM. And let's look at the identity. And it has done, right? So it has automatically provisioned the system assigned managed identity. And by the way, as you remember, if I delete this VM, this managed identity is also gone. And you would see this, whatever this name of this my Ubuntu. Okay, so let's check it into Azure Active Directory quickly. It should have provision there too, right? So enterprise applications, all applications, apply. And here you go, right? So that's what I was talking about. So when I said that, when you see it in action, that how simple and how easy it is to create a managed identity, how simple it would be easy for you to configure the role-based access control, and then you can also use this role-based access control effectively to, you know, use or create resources or access different resources. So we're going to go a step further now, and we're going to see whether you, by using the system managed identity, can we access a SQL DB, right? So I probably have already created a resource here. Let's look into, and I have a SQL DB created here as a past services, and let's just sort it here. And that's my SQL server, which is hosting my SQL DB here. So in order to do that, in order to allow the managed identity, obviously we need to give the rights on the SQL server itself, right? So let's say this is my SQL server here. The first thing that I need to ensure, which I already did that we have an Active Directory admin here, right? And I have this my account configured here, who has been configured as an Active Directory admin. With that, I should be able to log into this, into SQL Management Studio and see whether I can add my system assigned managed identity into the security in a role, and assign him a role on the SQL and see if that works for us, right? That's our next task. So I'm going to launch the SQL Management Studio. Before I show you the SQL part, I also want to show you that I showed you the Azure CLI. I can also show you the Azure PowerShell, where you could log in with add AZ account identity, similar command but PowerShell. And because I have the rights on this resource group, I can also see all the resources within this resource group. So if you see this command here that I ran, it gave me all the resources here, right? Resource group. You will see different resources that I created, Ubuntu machine and Win10 and all that, right? So that's another example through PowerShell, just not the CLI. I just want to demonstrate you. Let's get into the SQL part, and I think my Management Studio is up. So first thing that we need to make sure that we change the authentication to Azure Active Directory Universal MFA, right? This is my URL for my SQL, which is I have here, and this is the Azure admin that I configured on the SQL server, right? Now I can connect, click connect here. Obviously it's going to ask me for authentication. Let's get into that. And if I remember my password. Obviously it would also kick your MFA. So I hope I have my phone here somewhere. I can check that quickly. Okay, so we are good here. So I can get into that. And now I should be able to go to the database here. And this is my default database that we created as a SQL DB as a PaaS service, right? If I go into the security here, the next thing that I need to do is create a user. I could do it manually, or I could do it through a SQL query. So let's try to run the SQL query here, and let's create that user for that managed system identity that we created, right? That's our next task. All right, so let's go there. So we're going to execute this command, which is create user. AZWin10 is the name of my VM, right? Which has a system assigned managed identity, and we are adding into the users for this particular database, right? Let's execute it. And it has completed successfully. So if I go back here into this users, I should be able to see it, right? Now, having this user is okay, but without giving him a role doesn't make much sense. Again, you could do it manually, or you could do it through a SQL query. So we'll do it through a SQL query. I can't speak. All right, so I executed the command. Now this particular system assigned managed identity has a DB data reader role. You could decide whatever role you want to give it, but just for this example here, that's what we give. Now let's see whether using the system assigned managed identity this we can access this information out of the tables here, right? So I think I created a table here which is called as a DBO info. There are 4 rows here, I guess, if I see here, just to demonstrate. Yep, and these are just garbage here, but just to prove the point here. Let's see how can we see this information using the system managed identity, because we already gave the system managed identity the DB data reader rights on your SQL, right? So let's see. So folks, what I did here is I tried to connect to the IDMS that we spoke about in our presentation, right? That URL 169.254, 169.254, which is the REST endpoint. And I'm invoking the web request. What I'm trying to get is an ARM token here that I would leverage to access resources. Once I have this access token, which is what it is, right? Then I can access the resources based on whatever the RBAC role I have given to this system as an assigned managed identity. To me, that sounds very simple and logical, right? Let's continue this route and see whether we can get the data out of the SQL database that we created earlier, right? So let's move on. So folks, the first thing that I need to do is to connect to the SQL server, and I created this connection here. These are the commands that I ran here to make sure that I can connect to my SQL server. Here is my SQL server name. Here is my SQL DB name. Very, very simple, right? You could put it into your code. It could be a C++ code or anything that you like. I'm just showing you through PowerShell. Alternatively, this would be coming out in your code, but just to show you that whether the system managed identity work or not. And then I actually open the table here, right? So DBO info is my table that I showed you here. And I'm seeing here when I executed this command, I see there are 4 rows here, right? And then when I say open the table, I can see the actual content here, right? So these are the 4 different rows. If you want to see this here, that's exactly what I was showing you on this table, right? So that proves the point that with the help of system managed identity, obviously this is going to come into the code, not here. You are able to access the data because you have given the right permissions on the SQL server, right? You could run it from a Linux VM, or you could run it from a Windows VM, however you want to do that. That proves the point. Next thing that I'm going to demonstrate to you is to access a storage account using the system managed identity, which will also strengthen the whole point. And we will try to access it through key vault, right? That's the right way to do that. Why I say so, I actually have another video created about a week or 2 back, where I have talked about how do you secure the Azure storage using managed identity. So for a broader detail, probably you want to go there, but and to see it, because if I do it here, it will be too long. But basically, I have created all the stuff into that video into there. I have everything in the key vault. I have a shared access storage, SAS keys already captured into the key vault. We're going to procure it through system managed identity, and then we'll see whether we can actually upload the data and see that whether it works for you or not, right? So that's our next task. All right, folks, so we're going to access the storage account using the system managed identities through key vault, right? So first I want to show you that this is my demo storage account. I have some sample containers created here for keep storing some of my blobs. These are my 3 blobs sitting here, and we're going to see whether we can access it or not. Before we go there, I also want to show you, because that's very important. If I go all the way up and access control IAM, I want to show you there's nothing that this user has been assigned rights, but by using the key vault, we should be able to access the data, upload the files and whatnot, right? That's our objective here. So what are we gonna do here is first basically let's get the shared access token, and in order to understand it better, I strongly recommend you to watch my video on securing the Azure storage, because all the other steps are there. I don't want to do it here because that would be repetition and it would unnecessarily increase the duration of this video. So let's go there and let's see what I did. So basically, when I went into this, I logged into this my system assigned managed identity on the VM. I connected to my subscription, and then I look for the key vault storage, because I have given this system managed identity the key vault access policy, the rights to get the SAS definition list, and when I did that, I get the SAS definition. I have got two SAS definitions here. I was testing, one is the demo def and one is the test def. I got that. I get the secret ID for them, and this is the secret ID. I put the secret ID into the variable here, right? Very easy. And this is all what you're gonna do in the code. I'm just demonstrating you the power of this, right? And now I want to see the shared access SAS token here, and I'm seeing here key vault secret show, and I'm pulling this SAS token out of key vault without even having access to the shared storage. I get the value here, the shared access signature here. I copied it, and just to show you, I added it into my URL here for the storage, and now we should be able to access the storage, right? And that's you could also do it from PowerShell if you want to do that, but I just want to make it short, easy. You could access and upload the data through the PowerShell commands. I'm going to copy this URL, which is the URI for SAS signature. It picked it up. Azure Demo SDG, all good. Connect, and here I am. All my blob containers that I showed you here, test01, right? I can upload it, download it. I don't want to waste your time, but that's what I wanted to show you. I still recommend you to see from the user managed identity. I didn't do that. You probably want to use my another video on Azure Kubernetes Services AD integration, and that's where I have shown the user managed identities integration with AKS pods and how you could leverage that to access different resources. But just to show you how to create a user managed identities, this is my resource group. I create here a new managed identity, and that's how you can create user assigned managed identity. This is very straightforward. It's an independent resource, not tied to anything here. So let's say here we call it a test 00195, right? And East US, all good, and you create it, and then you can use this user assigned managed identity for different purposes. So that's what I think. This concludes this session. For greater details, as I mentioned, I will put it into the description. You can use my other two videos for Azure Storage as well as Azure Kubernetes Services. That would give you some more in-depth and insight of it, but I think that concludes this session today. I'm glad I can keep it in time. Hopefully you like it, and please send your comments, feedback, share the word if you like it. Thank you so very much for your valuable time, and have a great night, evening, or day, whatever region you are. We'll talk to you again with my next presentation. Thank you. Bye.